Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds by nerds, I'm Nerd Steve, and today I'm joined by Ben Barsh. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thank you very much for having me on the show again.
Yeah, I think it's been a long time since we talked.
Been a very long time.
Like Gen Con maybe,
I think it was Gamehole,
or maybe
right?
Gamehole
No,
Con.
maybe it was Gamehole.
Yeah, it was
It
Gamehole
was
Con.
one of yeah, it was
Yeah,
with
so
Haskins. Yeah,
yeah, not as long, but still long.
yeah,
It's like almost a
long time.
year.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you were with Pacesetter Games and Simulations. You want to give the elevator pitch? Let people know what you do if they're unfamiliar.
So Pacesetter Games and Simulations is me and my father's third-party publishing company. In short, we do adventure supplements and campaigns for 5th edition D&D, for Swords and Wizardry for those who are fans of Frog God Games, and the old school basic expert. That's probably not a term many people hear nowadays, but we like to publish for the old school because that's where our roots are. But we also love the new school games a lot, considering I play like at least twice a week.
That's awesome, and we can never have too much content to draw from, and there's a thriving OSR community.
Yeah.
So the games that you're playing, are you playing 5e, modern D&D? Are you playing OSR games? What are you playing?
So I primarily play 5e nowadays because that is what my group has pretty much chosen to play, right? So my home group that I've played with since like early high school, we started out on first edition, which again is probably something that not many people hear now a lot, but we quickly transitioned into 5e. And my main OSR consumption is when we do like one shots or like little mini campaigns, like just run a module, and then convention play as well. So I still get my good dosage of OSR, even though we play a lot of 5e nowadays.
So is Swords and Wizardry your OSR of choice, or do you dabbling in some other stuff?
So I would say it's an equal split for me for BX. The basic expert sets, and back me if you can include all the other box sets that were created in that system. It's really tough because I did a lot with Swords and Wizardry when I did the Frog God Games YouTube channel. And I had played it like a little bit before, of course. I have all the books. Even like when Matt Finch, the writer, basically had it in like manuscript form. He gave one of the originals to my dad. So we have one of those. It's really cool. So I would say it's like an even split. I also love first edition a lot. I don't know. It's so hard to pick one, as you know, as being a gamer. It's like it kind of changes with the wind and with what you're focusing on at that time. But I love S&W a lot. It's super simple. If I if I run new players through games, I sometimes pick Swords and Wizardry because it's just so simple that it's more focusing on the adventure than stats or anything like that.
Nice. Yeah, I must say I have not played a whole lot of OSR stuff since probably the source material when I was a kid. Playing the box sets. Um, but it's always interesting to see that like there's a huge community for that that's is still going.
Well, next time we're at a con, I got to run a game for you then.
Yeah,
It'd be super fun.
I did play in one of Bill's games, Bill Webb's
Mhm.
games from Frog Out Games, but that's also like a different kind of experience as well, because he'll run a game for a lot of people at once.
A lot.
A
Like it
lot.
gets up to like 20 I've seen before. It's insane.
Yeah, it's insane that he's able to do that and then keep it and able to keep it moving.
Yeah. No, it's insane. I mean, the coolest experience, maybe not like the coolest, but one of my favorite by far was actually at like Gamehole, I think 2 years ago or something. And Web DM, we're walking around filming, and I was like fanning out so hard. I was just like sitting at the Pacesetter booth, and they were just sitting around like vlogging and stuff. And I walked up to them, and I was like, "Hey, like nice to meet you. I'm Ben. Blah blah blah." And we were talking, and over walks Matt Finch, who wrote Swords and Wizardry, and they're just like, hang on for a second, and then they go fan out to Matt Finch because
Yeah.
they love Swords and Wizardry. So it was like this whole like I was fanboying them, they were fanboying Matt Finch, and then we set up a game with Matt, and they played Swords and Wizardry with him. It was super cool. It was really really cool.
That is awesome. Actually, that's one of the cool things about that convention too. It's small
Yeah,
and you get to hang out with everybody. You
So
know,
we just need to get like all the D&D YouTubers in one spot playing Swords and Wizardry. It'd be
yeah, yeah.
super awesome.
Well, we were trying to do that, not necessarily playing Swords and Wizardry, but we were trying to get
Right.
them all in one
Yeah.
spot, and then
Mhm.
the apocalypse landed.
Of
So,
course. Nerdarchy Convention was going to be that spot, man. That was going to be popping with influencers.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was what we set out to do, and then
Mm.
like I don't know, the fates had other ideas.
Yes,
Someday,
yeah.
eventually, the world will return to normal, and
Hopefully, yeah. It will. We'll get there.
we'll get it going on. But what are you gonna do? So,
Yeah.
so you guys have a Kickstarter going on that's in the final,
Mhm.
final leg there. You got like a
Yeah.
2 days left or so, right? And it struck me as interesting because it's a solo play, and it's called
Yes.
Into the Unknown.
Yeah. So Into the Unknown is a solo adventure for all of those systems that I listed, 5e, Swords and Wizardry, and BX, Basic Expert. And it is complete like by yourself kind of adventure. For anyone who's read like a Choose Your Own Adventure or Pick a Path or the Endless Quest books, it works very similar to that. So, you turn to a page, it lists off, there's these rooms, there's these hallways. If you go right, turn to page, blah, blah, blah. If you go left, turn to page, blah, 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 basically. Stats wise, you roll your character and you roll the monsters. So you are kind of playing both sides. But it's super fun. I've played solo modules growing up. And that's kind of what my main source of D&D was before I had a group. So it's really cool to be able to, put a solo module out for the world, especially since there's not a lot of them. They're super rare, and there seems to be interest in it though, which is really cool.
Yeah, I'm a little embarrassed to say I didn't realize there were other solo adventures out there. I know it seems to be getting more popular now, and more people are coming up with them.
Mhm.
But up until recently, I didn't even think that was a thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like I said, I played him growing up, and kind of worked out to where like we weren't meeting and playing as much like my group is all in college, so especially during like COVID, during school, it's kind of hard to meet. And my friends were like, well, I want to play D&D, like, and we tried out virtual and all that kind of stuff. And so my solution was just write a solo book.
Yeah, yeah.
And then totally at first I was just kind of writing it so they had something to play. And then, obviously I have the publishing company. So I was like, other people might like this as well. So,
So you already have a handful of publications to your
yeah.
name. How many have you done so far?
I think 6 or 7, I would say.
And how old are you again?
I'm 22. Why did I have to think about that? I had to think about my age. I was like, answer this question correctly. I'm 22. Yeah, I'm 22. Final answer.
Finally, that's pretty impressive. I mean, you're a young guy and you're already pumping out quite a bit of content as a third-party publisher and a writer. I mean, you're not even finished school yet, so it's kind of cool.
I got lucky though. I kind of grew up in it. Like I said, my dad has been writing for third-party companies for a really long time and now has his own. And I grew up basically going to conventions with the old guard of TSR, like the original writers for Dungeons and Dragons. So it was super easy just hopping into it, I guess. But it's still incredibly challenging no matter what you do.
You're a legacy.
You can call me that, sure. But like I said, I mean, I just was in the right place, right time with birth, I guess. I don't know.
Boom. Well, legacy in the sense that you're the second generation guy. Like you said, you grew up into it.
Yeah.
Which is it was just kind of cool. What was that like growing up?
I have no complaints about my childhood, like at all. Like even people like my age are like, I would never go back to middle school. Like I would go back to middle school. Are you kidding me? Yeah. I loved everything. I'm a really big, like, make the most out of anything kind of person. And so when like tabletop gaming came along, I get really obsessive. So I became really obsessive really fast with D&D. And I grew up playing like board games with my dad, and we would play like little D&D games here with like my sisters. And I just transitioned to it super hard in high school. So I played really, really high level sports for a while. I was like on one of the best baseball teams in Michigan, was probably going to go to college to play. And I would say D&D kind of like came in
Sidelined
the
you.
way of that. Yeah. Because when I started playing a bunch, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. And then like obviously my dad had a bunch of published stuff for then, and I was like, I want to write something too. So I just became obsessed with it. And I saw Pacesetter as something that I could do with my future, probably easier
Yeah.
than sports. And it's almost worked out that way. So it's gone pretty well.
So, so you're saying D&D tanked your baseball career?
It kind of did, honestly. I think that and Call of Duty, I won't lie to you,
Yeah.
because I as well, I've done like a stupid amount of things. I sometimes spread myself too thin a little bit, but I was like a near professional Call of Duty player for a while. I was like ranked top 3 in the world for 1v1 play, basically. And so I did that for a while, and then I decided D&D was going to be the one. So I was
Nice.
choosing between the 3 basically, and I
So
had to do
when you
one.
were growing up, like you're kind of getting induced and playing with like all these like high level, top tier industry people, right? Did you know it at the time? Did you acknowledge it, or was it just like that was your normal?
That's a good question, because I've thought about that a lot. I don't think I understood the gravity of it, when I was in like high school, for example. Because I was just kind of friends with them.
Mm,
It was never like a obviously, like I had read some modules before I went to the conventions, but I didn't really know names yet, or anyone. So when I was with like Jim Ward, for example, who was worked directly with Gary Gygax and wrote the first edition monster manual and all these other things, um, it didn't impact me until later, when I was like, that's Jim Ward, like this guy is one of the people who created the worlds that we live in today. Um, so I think it dawned on me as we went. But like I said, I grew up kind of like friends with them, and they were always like, oh, that's the little kid running around the convention with his camera. Like,
yeah.
so yeah, I slowly got into it, but I certainly still have a lot of like wow moments, like, wow, that is that person. So
So at what age were you running around with the camera?
I think I was like 14 or 13, and I was like, I'm gonna be a D&D vlogger.
Yeah.
And I took terrible vlogs of conventions that were really bad, like to the point where I was like so embarrassed to be filming myself, and
Mm.
I would like film in the hallways and hardly even show the convention. It was just like so stupid. I still have the videos. I'd private them on my YouTube channel though, because I want people to
uh,
see them.
I don't know. We've got some really bad ones on our channel as well. It's just it shows like it's your journey. That's where you
Yeah.
started. And also like you said, you were a kid shooting videos and putting them on YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it worked out in the long run. So,
Yeah. I mean, and then you got the gig at Frog God Games for a while too, where you
Mhm.
were doing that.
Yeah, I was their YouTuber, I guess you could call it,
Yeah.
media creator. Oh,
So if I don't have that linked in the description. I do have a bunch of other things in the description, including the Kickstarter. If people want to check that out,
yeah,
where you can see Ben talking about swords and wizardry and other frog god things as
yeah,
well. You got some. I
great
think you have
company.
some interviews over there as well.
Yeah, we did a little bit. That came kind of near like the end of when I was working on the channel, so
Yeah,
there's not as many of those, but there's a ton of other like D&D and Swords and Wizardry content in general over there. So
which is cool. So how did you like creating content for the tubes?
I loved it. It was something that when I started talking to specifically like Zach Glazer, who's the COO of Frog God, I know you know him just
Hmm.
for other people, but he was like, you get creative freedom, and I was like, I get creative freedom. And he's like, do what you want, film what you want, just don't do anything stupid. And I'm like, okay. So it was awesome. I mean, it was really really cool. The editing process was the one I struggled with at first, but once I got used to it, it's just kind of like clockwork.
Yeah,
But I love it a lot. I don't do a lot of like my own personal YouTube stuff much, but I do make TikTok videos, which gets a bad rap a lot of the times, but don't worry, it's like Harry Potter and D&D and Disney stuff, so it's not like the cringe TikTok. So I still like making videos a lot. It's just it's tough to balance all the things that I'm doing right now and like really put a lot of time into YouTube.
yeah. Oh yeah, I forgot. I forgot you're doing TikTok as well, and I mean, you've been kind of successful over there as well, right? I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
think last year when I talked to you, you said you had like 5,000 followers over there or something.
I think now now I'm at like 43,000, I think. I have
Yeah, that's a bit of a jump.
yeah. Yeah. I have the behind the scenes metrics aren't great. But I think I have somewhere around like 6 to 8 million views over my videos. So it's been pretty successful. I'm very, very grateful that that's helped me a lot grow as a
I mean,
person.
there's a thriving TikTok D&D community over there. I was kind of
Awesome.
surprised, and when I say that to people, they're like, "What are you talking?" Especially like people my age. Like,
It's so awesome, man. I have 2 accounts. I have like my personal account,
uh,
and then I made like a Pacesetter account, and I started uploading D&D videos there. And like the first one was like 3,000 views, and then like 4,000 views, and now I'm like, oh, I get to make D&D videos too. Like,
yeah,
yeah, it's fun. It's really cool.
we've got like 500 followers over there.
Yeah.
I started it. I didn't really know what to do with it. I was taking like the stupid bits we do at the beginning and throwing like cutting them out of our videos and throwing them over there.
Yeah.
But it's like, every like platform is a job, right?
Yes.
And every platform could be a full-time job, and there's
Yeah.
so many platforms.
Yeah. Well, TikTok, I think you guys are great on YouTube. TikTok doesn't really have great monetization. So even though you get a ton of
Yeah,
views,
yeah.
you don't make like they just introduced a creator fund. So it's kind of similar to like YouTube, to where like a certain amount of views is X amount of dollars, but in TikTok it's literal like pennies. So it's
YouTube's
not as
that way
glamorous
too.
as it
YouTube is
seems.
that way too, though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I got a couple videos ago. I have no problem like sharing this because it's
Yeah.
not my main source of income. It's just for fun. Like I think I got a video a couple days ago that got like 20 or 30,000 views. I think it's at right now. And I made like 54 cents on it. I was like, yes, 54 cents, man. I can
Yeah.
almost get a McChicken.
So close, so close.
So close.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about when I saw you were coming on, but yeah, you're like our third. You're like our third TikToker.
Yeah, I guess.
I was trying to get
That's
more.
pretty awesome.
I was trying to get more of them to come on. I think it's kind of cool. Like,
Yeah.
I like to see the different ways that the hobby's growing
Mhm.
and where it's going. So that fascinates me. So like getting those folks on, I find is really cool. And also, I like whenever I can get the like new generation of YouTubers on. Uh, like which we've had like XP to level 3 and
Mhm.
Logan on, and it's just so interesting to see like those guys coming up because they're like all close to your age too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Which is I've never met them. I really want to meet them.
yeah. I mean, they're all really, really good guys. We got to hang out with Logan and Jacob a lot at PAX Unplugged, and
Mhm.
then hung out with Jacob at Gen Con, and we had done Saver Dice with him as well.
Right, of course. Yeah.
And we also got to meet Davy Chappie at PAX Unplugged. That was funny because like Ted doesn't really pay attention to too much that's going on in the communities. He's like super busy with Nerdarchy and his day job and having a family. So, Davy Chappie came up to him to say hi to him, and Ted had no idea who he was. And it was so funny
No.
because we had sponsored a bunch of videos on Davy's channel, and he's like, "Hey, you pay like 20% of my income," and you're like, "I had no idea who I am."
I hate when that happens. I'm remiss to say that has happened to me multiple times too, and it's like it just feels so bad after. I'm like, oh, I feel like a jerk.
Yeah, but it happens, and like I'm terrible with like remembering names and stuff. And
Yeah, it's tough.
at some point in my life, I decided like I just own it when it happens, and it's just
Yeah.
like I feel like a jerk, and I just say, "Look, I'm a jerk and an idiot. I'm sorry, but
Yeah.
right now your name is like I worked at a job as a personal trainer, and I had this client, and I worked with her for a while, and I left the job, and I came back, and I ran into them, and I could not remember the name. I could remember like personal details about their life and
Right.
their family, but their name was like
was gone.
was just gone. I'm like, oh, I feel so stupid.
I saw a really funny video actually about this like
Yeah.
yesterday, and it was like, if you ever forget someone's name, ask them how to spell it, and then or like just be like, how do you spell your name again? But then it's gonna be something like Ben.
Yeah.
It's gonna be Like
Yeah.
Ben? What do you mean?
Bob.
Yeah.
B-O-B.
Oh, I thought there was another B at the end. My
Yeah,
bad. Okay.
yeah. How would you spell your name if it was backwards?
Right. Yeah, you could do that too. It would work just fine. You'll never forget a name again.
Yeah, no, I will absolutely. So, but what do you do? It's one of those things that happens. So you know what? You want to talk a little bit about the process of writing a solo adventure? This is your first
Yeah.
one, right?
Yeah. So, my, it, I've played, like I said, I've played them before, and my dad has actually written 3 of them for Pacesetter in the past, and they're like some of our best-selling work. So I've been able to have his insight and help on it, basically. So I kind of break it down just like how I'd break down like writing a normal campaign. So for this solo adventure, everything happens in this region called Farador, and there's a bunch of different like hotspots and locations, towns, dwarven settlements. We have like a new race called the Finfolk. So there's all these different settlements. So I started with just writing about the settlements and saying what's here. If you go there, there's these vendors, there's these magic items you can trade for or buy, all that kind of stuff. And then you kind of jump into the adventure setting writing. So I start out generally just writing like how I would a normal campaign. So creating the map, describing what's inside of the room. And then the main hook for the solo adventure is that you just have to kind of break that down into smaller parts. So, like I said, if you go into this room, X, Y happens. If you go left, turn to this page. If you go right, turn to this page. So I still kind of write it like I would for like a normal campaign, but it's just chopped up into like smaller sections and text box. So that way, you're not reading all the information about the dungeon you go into right when you enter it, because that wouldn't really make sense, right? Because if you're looking at it through your perspective and you walk into this cave, you only see what's in the room and you have 2 options in front of you, right? So even for the maps, we'll have all the maps done by Wonky. He's actually in the chat right now. He's a really, really great guy. He does all of our maps and artwork, and he's just an awesome dude. So we'll like break down those maps into smaller parts. So like you'll only see this room on this page, and then when you flip the page, you'll get the next room. So you don't see the whole dungeon. You don't see the whole paragraph of text. It's all just really broken up into small parts.
So, have you done any playtesting yet, or is that the next stage?
That's the next stage. So I'm going to start with my home group wants to be the first one to play test it. And I've promised them that that much, since they helped me play test nearly everything for anything that I publish, at least. And then from there, we have a bunch of interest from backers that want to play test. And then just friends of mine that I know through gaming that have offered up. So playtesting is going to be the big part of this, just to make sure that we get everything right, because every minute detail in a solo adventure matters. Because if one dot doesn't connect, it's kind of ruins everything. If you turn to a page expecting to go to the next room, but you're in another dungeon, it just doesn't make sense, and it kind of ruins the immersion of the game. So it's got to all be perfect.
So will you be doing all the writing for both versions of it?
So yeah, we have the 3 different versions for 5e, Swords and Wizardry, and BX. So I will do all like I'm writing it first in 5th edition because I found it easiest to convert out from 5th edition, because you don't have to add, you just have to kind of take away. So then my dad is going to do the BX conversion because he just is better with the mechanics of it. And then him and I will do the Swords and Wizardry conversions together, basically. So I know enough about Swords and Wizardry to be able to be pretty comfortable doing it, considering I did an entire video series on it at the Frog God Games channel. I know it pretty well.
That will definitely do it. Especially depending on how you do the content. Like I know when 5e came out, we broke a lot of the stuff down into kind of micro content. Mm-hmm. So like everything's like a deep dive and you kind of like really learn it.
Yeah. Yeah. I really enjoy the writing process, and I kind of do it in waves for the most part. When I'm as a writer, I'll sit down for like a month straight every day and write like 3,000 words. And then I won't for like a month, and then I'll do it again. I have a really weird process, and I thought there was something wrong with me until I started talking to other writers.
Yeah.
And like 80% of the time that's the case with them as well. So I'm glad my process isn't crazy.
Yeah. Or not any more crazy than anyone else's, at least.
Right. We're all crazy. It's just we're all crazy together.
That's right. We're all mad here.
Yep.
Yeah. So during the apocalypse, are you playing more or less or the same?
Um, Definitely less, unfortunately. We took a very long game break, probably like 2 months. And then we're back to almost being like totally okay with playing again. So I have like a back patio that we set up tables on and we kind of like sit apart and play at. So we're outside and we're all kind of spaced out because all of us get COVID tested pretty normally. So we started to kind of get back into it, I guess. But we did take a really long break during like the normal, or not the normal, but the heat of the pandemic, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, we just moved everything online.
Yeah.
We've actually played like I guess Saturday Night Ted ran on
Yeah, we
Zoom.
started to try to play online, but my group didn't really like it, so
Yeah,
we were like, we'll wait. So
yeah,
which is unfortunate because I do play in an online game and I think it goes pretty well.
yeah. I mean, me and Ted we're already used to playing online anyway. We played quite a few. It's funny, like so we used to do a thing where we'd each me and Ted would each run a game on Saturday nights, and then we'd get like another DM to come in and kind of run like a different non D&D system. So so we were looking for local people, and we finally like started getting that going. And as soon as we were like ready to kick it off, it was like, well, I guess we're doing it all online now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's kind of COVID has ruined gaming for a lot of people. But I do love the fact that we have access to online gaming now. I think it helps a lot of people still play and fall in love with the game because they're able to play with a group that is across the country. Some people don't have never played with their people in person.
so surprisingly enough, though, I'm actually finding more people are playing more, not less.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
would think so too. Yeah.
and people who've never played online are starting to play online.
Yeah.
And then once this goes away and we get back to kind of normal, those same people will probably continue to play online.
I
Like
I think so too.
one of the barriers is like breaking our own inertia. So doing something new is always kind of hard, right? But once you have no choice and you do it,
Mhm.
then it's going to become that much easier. So people that couldn't find games before, I think, are going to start being able to find games because they've been exposed to online gaming. And I think, in it kind of sucks now, but I think in the long term, it's going to be good for the hobby.
Yeah, I think so too. I think any growth is good growth when it comes to the people playing the game. And that's why I wanted to do a solo adventure that's like familiar and like full color, nice maps, nice artwork that people can recognize it like a normal campaign book. It's just they can play by
Yeah.
themselves because the biggest complaint that I personally see, and just kind of calling back to our conversation about TikTok, when I upload D&D videos, they're like, oh my God, I love D&D, but I don't have a group. It's like, well, here you go. You don't even need a group anymore.
I'm just like envisioning the commercial and the pitch. Do you love D&D but have no friends?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
we
I'm not
have
going to
the game
slight
for
people
you?
like that, but I like where you're headed.
uh, I kid, I kid.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, like I said, we were talking a little bit beforehand. Like, there's a whole game based around that.
Hmm.
Iron Sworn, and I think people can download it for free. And I've actually had quite a few creators been like, I'm into this new thing, and they've mentioned,
Yeah.
they mentioned that. So it's definitely becoming more popular and more of a thing, and clearly it's always been a problem, right?
Hmm.
Like for as long as we've been doing Nerdarchy, we get that comment like, how do you find a group? How do you find
Of course.
people
Yeah.
to play with? And and some people really struggle with doing going out there and putting themselves out there to find it. So
Yeah.
this is the thing for them. They don't want to actually do a video game, but they want to play, and
Yeah.
this is something for them.
Yeah. Totally. And the coolest part for me, I think, is all the comments on the Kickstarter and messages that I get from people are like, "Oh, I haven't played D&D in 20 years, and now I'm getting back into it. Which system should I pick?" And I'm like, "Well, do I have the answers for you?"
Try
It's
all
just so
three,
cool.
then you
Yeah,
figure it out.
yeah, yeah. So it it's just really cool to see people interacting with the game in a different way, I guess
Yeah,
now. So it's just it's always being ready to evolve with the times. I think is the most important thing.
So, do you have any like non D&D games that you're? Because like even like Swords and Sorcery and the BX, they're still kind of like D&D
Yeah.
derivatives.
Yeah.
You have any like non D&D games that you're playing?
So that I'm playing right now,
Not necessarily currently, but
yeah. So we're actually working on a non D&D game, although it is an RPG. It's basically like a post-apocalyptic RPG, kind of like Gamma World
oh,
from back in
nice.
the day. So we're working on that. So my group and I are like starting to kind of get into that and play test it a little bit. But me and my friends, we love doing board games, I guess. And again, we kind of play D&D centric board games. I love
Yeah,
D&D. It's hard to get away. I just love fantasy overall. It's kind of always been tough for me to get away from fantasy. Um, so yeah, I mean, I kind of just stick in my lane for the most part, I guess. I know that's not as cool of an answer, but
it's fine. It's a valid one. I mean, there's a lot of people that will only only play D&D and won't go away from that.
yeah,
Um, I mean, it's weird because when I was a kid, it seemed like we were trying a new game every week.
right.
And then like we started like what we call the Nerdarchy group, which was like me, Ted, my brother, my buddy Mark. We get into it later on, but like it's been together for like 20 years. It was like all we played was D&D up until like fourth edition, and then we played fourth for like a year and a half. Someone started a Heroes Unlimited game. I was like, the system is terrible, and then I started I would rather play Marvel Phase Rip than this. Well, and also I actually think that's still a good system,
Yeah.
but so I started poking around and like online, and like the two systems for superhero games that kept coming up were Champions and
Mhm.
Mutants and Masterminds. And Mutant Masterminds with D20 base. I was like, well, our group knows this, So we started playing in that system, but then we started playing like superheroes game. Then we did like a Dresden Files urban fantasy style game. We did a straight up fantasy game, uh, and and then like my brother had moved back to the area from New Mexico, and he's like, "Hey, you want to start doing this thing? And how about Pathfinder?" Which he'd been playing Pathfinder out there, and our group had never really explored Pathfinder at all. So we started with like a Pathfinder kind of game, and then like, did you know D&D is doing a new edition? Because we were completely unaware. Like I think we were
Right.
like the only ones that didn't know. So I don't know how we missed it, but we totally
Well,
mixed.
Pathfinder grabbed a lot of people, so I don't blame you at all. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, you know what? We didn't. We weren't Pathfinder players. We played
Right.
we played like two or three games
Oh, okay. Okay.
of Pathfinder. To be honest with you, we had just been playing. We just had moved into other systems, and it was like after we started Nerdarchy and had been doing it for a while that the basic rules were there for free, and I
Right.
downloaded them and go, hey, there's this other thing. You guys want to talk about it? So,
Right.
and then we've been off and running since then. I mean, it's been our favorite edition of the game.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. My group did Pathfinder. Well, I have the core rules for the first edition game,
yeah,
and we opened the rule book and instantly got overwhelmed and went right back to 5e. Um, I've never really I've played Pathfinder a couple times. Like I've played
yeah,
Pathfinder Society at conventions and stuff. But when we started getting into 5e, we were like, this is it. We've done
yeah,
like we did one campaign that was like 2 years long where we played like at least every week, which was a lot of gaming and campaign. And now we're in like our second major campaign, I guess you could call it, because we've just done like smaller ones in between. So yeah, we play a lot of D&D.
Do you usually run, or you usually a player?
Yeah, IGM.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I like I said, I play in an online game, which is one of my buddies from high school actually, and it's they're like a grade lower than I was in high
mm-hmm.
school, so you're younger. So it's cool to play with them. I don't play as much anymore. I'm kind of like a guest now, but it's cool to be able to play every once in a while because I'm just constantly DMing and
Yeah.
and writing and converting books that we get for 5e and project managing, and it's like I want to play the game sometimes, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to think about it. I just want to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I saw this meme on Facebook the other day, and it was like a guy with his hat backwards and a skateboard, and he's like, when the DM finally gets to play, and he's like, "What's up, my fellow gamers?"
Yeah.
It's great. I was like, "That's me when I get to play."
How did this happen?
Yeah,
So when you run, you're usually running all pace setter stuff? Do you run Wizards of the Coast stuff, homebrew stuff?
it's a healthy mix of all of the above, I would
Yeah.
say. Um, I I don't think I've ran like a full hardcover, like cover to cover, in a really long time. So the last one from Wizards, I would say that we took a lot out of was Tales of the Yawning Portal or Tales from the Yawning Portal, one of the two.
Yeah.
But those are old school adventures made for 5e. So I kind of took like the OSR, me loving old school cheat code, I guess,
Yeah, yeah.
and ran those. But it's a lot of homebrew, I think, and some of that homebrew has turned into Pacesetter products. Um, because I kind of see it kind of like how stand-up comedians practice their art. Basically, they go to, smaller shows, they test out jokes, and then if it lands with a crowd, they're like, okay, I'll take this and work on it, make it better. If it doesn't land, then it just either wasn't the right crowd or just pitch it. And I kind of see that the same way with like DMing and D&D. So I'll write like an adventure for our game, and because I run a very sandbox open world kind of campaign. So I'll write like an adventure, and they'll play it, and they'll like, if they have great reactions to it and it's a lot of fun, then I'm like, all right, in the bank, going into the Pacesetter pipeline. But if it's like kind of slow and they're not connecting with it all that well, I'm like, okay, maybe I'll bench it for a while. So it's a lot of like homebrew, I would say, overall.
So with that in mind, when you're like prepping for your games, do you put more prep work into it? Like, oh, like these aren't just my game notes. This may actually turn into a product. So do I do the work now, or do
Um,
you wait to see how it does?
I usually wait. I really like, and a lot of people might say lazy, but I really like improv DMing,
Yeah.
because I'm just comfortable with it because I've been playing for so long, and I think I'm pretty quick on my feet for the most part. So I'll write like a mini outline, I guess, and then go from there. Like I NPC names are something that I always have to write down because I'll never remember them, and I suck at making them up on the spot. But other than that, I have just like the encounters in mind of what I want to do, and then I'll just grab my monster manual, flip to that page, and we'll do the fight. And I'll have like a mini sketching of a map. There's not a ton. I don't do a lot of prep work. I try to just kind of like let them do their thing and just see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of do the same. I think a good investment of time is having a handful of NPCs you can pull out of your back
Mhm.
pocket. Loot drops are kind of
Or
good.
out of the box encounters as well.
Yeah, yeah, that actually works really well. I've used a bunch of those, but now, I mean, because we didn't write them, one of our writers wrote them,
Yeah,
so it's kind of cool to like use them and experience them. But they've come in handy from time to time as well.
yeah, yeah. I just actually got a stack of Nord Games books
Yeah,
as well. And I'm like, oh, I can't, like a bestiary. Because Chris Haskins, their CEO, sent me a bunch of extra stuff that I didn't even know I didn't
yeah.
have. I don't know how he knew I didn't have it, but he sent me a bunch of decks and a bunch of their extra books, and I'm like, ooh, now I have like a ton of stuff to pull out whenever I want. So
They
shout out to
have
Nord Games.
they have a Kickstarter coming out this week, I think,
Mm-hmm.
for I don't know. Do you have Revenge of the Horde?
Yes, yeah, I have one. I have that. Yeah,
Yeah, the
the
minis.
bestiary, right?
Yeah, minis for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, I know. He's been talking about that for a while. I was
Yeah,
like, because when he originally asked me about it, because we have the miniatures, and he's like, "How's the miniatures business?" And I'm like, "You got to really love it. You got to really love it. You got to be really connected to it. But I think you can pull it off because your company is massive."
yeah.
And I'm glad he's finally doing it. And it's
This,
just exciting to see. Every book that they do is just exciting. Like I feel like
yeah,
a kid on Christmas when I see their projects launch. Like the alchemy book, I was like, I want this so bad.
yeah. They definitely hit like the last couple. They've really hit the right beats, especially
Yeah.
their treacherous traps.
Yes,
Like
that's really cool too.
I felt like that was like much needed, and no one has. I don't know that anyone else did it to that level yet.
Yeah, I don't think so.
So that really took off for them.
Yeah, no, they he's got a good grasp on demand, I would
Yeah.
say. Is Chris is like really, really some of his awesome qualities. He's got a bunch. He's a really, really awesome dude. But
Yeah,
he
it
bought me
was
a painting at one convention. I was like, God, this guy rocks.
nice. It's like Christmas.
Yeah, we were just walking around talking, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And then he comes over 30 minutes later with the painting, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Chris, what the hell? I could have bought it." He's like, "Just take it," and I'm like, "All right, fine." Got one for his brother too. It was really cool.
Yeah, so yeah, it was cool to get to hang out with you and those guys
Yeah.
at Gamehole Con, which I mean I've been friends with Chris for a while now, but
Mhm.
you know, back in the olden days when we used to do conventions, it was a really cool place to meet people, you know, that you've been
Yeah.
friends with.
Yeah, it's awesome. I love it a lot, and
Yeah.
especially like after all the games have been played and it's kind of nighttime and everyone is just kind of sitting around. Some people are, having drinks and stuff. It's just a warming atmosphere, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
Just sitting talking to like lifelong friends who you've played games with at conventions, or new people. I just love meeting new people at conventions. It's always a thrill. It's really cool.
Well, I mean, that's the cool thing about the hobby, right? You have this shared experience, even if you don't know
Mm-hmm.
each other, that you can just start talking and like you get it, right? You get
Yeah.
each other, and you have similar stories, and
Yeah.
before you know it, it's a new person, but they feel like a lifelong friend.
Yeah. I would say that sums up conventions really well overall.
Yeah, for me, like conventions became more about like just meeting up with people you don't normally get to hang out with, and less
Mhm.
about the actual convention stuff.
Right. Yeah, I know. I don't even play as many games at conventions anymore because we usually do like a Pacesetter booth at most conventions, so that takes
Yeah,
up like majority of my day, and then I'll maybe run a game or two, but then I'm just like I just want to get dinner with people,
yeah,
and just like catch up.
relax, chill. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess it depends too. Like if you're like just an attendee, you might not get the game that much in your regular life. Where
Yes.
for us, like we always have plenty of games going on, so
Mhm.
gaming at a convention isn't really a big deal unless it's like there's a different game you want to play.
Yeah. No, like so I think the last convention where I was just an attendee was Gen Con,
Yeah,
where I had no required time where I had to be anywhere, no commitments really. I just went with my friends. And there were points in the day where we were like, we don't know what to do. So we would go over, I don't know if we were like fully allowed to do this, but we would like go over to like one of the hotels that is connected.
yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it was open gaming area. Pretty
Oh
sure.
yeah, yeah.
I, for, we tried to go into a boardroom once and the door was locked, unfortunately. But
Yeah. See, now
we
if you would have like picked the lock and gone in, then I'd
I
be
know
like,
I didn't have my thieves tools.
then
I
I'd be
didn't have my
like,
thieves
now
tools.
maybe you're doing something you're not supposed to do. But
Right. Yeah.
you're
No,
fine.
we walked away. We went downstairs and there was open. We found this one. I can't remember what the hotel was called. No one was in this open gaming area. There was like 20 tables.
Yeah,
So we pushed two tables together and we just had this like 6 hour home game at Gen Con, but it just felt electric. Like it was just a whole different atmosphere.
yeah,
It was awesome. And the thing I love a lot about Gen Con is the auction that they do. Um, it's just such a fun environment. Gen Con was one of the conventions I went to when I was in like high school and just getting into conventions. So that auction hall feels like home for me because I spent so much time in there with my dad and like bidding on things. One of the Frank Menser, who wrote the Red Box set
hmm
with the dragon on it, the red dragon. He actually auctioned off a red box and I bought it when I was like 15 with like $60, which was like a lot of money for me back then.
yeah, yeah.
And it's still a lot of money for a lot of people for games. And like I bought it, and at the time it was my first convention. I didn't even know he wrote it.
Oh
And he's
yeah,
auctioning it off. And my dad's like, go get it signed by him. So I walked up and had him sign it. I was like, you're Frank? And he's like, I'm Frank. And it was just like the coolest thing ever.
yeah.
So Gen Con just always for me is just a great con. And there's just that group of like auction people that I love meeting up with. It's super cool.
I've never done any of the auctions.
Oh, it's awesome, man.
I'm
You
gonna,
gotta go. You
I'll
gotta
have
go
to
to
check
like
it
the
out.
charity auction. It's hilarious. It is so fun. They raise a ton of money for charity. I think it's usually like Saturday nights, maybe Friday night. It's just such a fun environment. Like they like auction off like Twinkies at some points just for charity. And it's like hilarious.
But you get
It's so
Twinkies.
fun. Yeah. They'll be like, we're gonna throw in a Twinkie with this shrink wrapped Village of Hamlet module. The module itself is worth like $100, but you also get a Twinkie. It's awesome.
Nice. That easily brings it up to worth $200.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So my first Gen Con, I brought my son with me, and like I think we played like two games. One was just a pickup game with I ran a game for my son, Doug, and Juice, and Cody from Taking 20. And we're just like,
Mhm.
hey, let's just play a game, and we just did a quick 5e game on on the floor, and we played Perdition from Mighty Cook Games, which is so it's a cipher system game,
Mhm.
and it's like I don't know if you know what Dino Riders is.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
No.
so it used to be like a toy line and a cartoon, and it
Okay.
was like tech max mixed up with dinosaurs and people that would ride them, and you had these like evil lizard guys. But so the
It's
game,
freaking awesome.
yeah, so the game kind of reminds me of that because it's similar. So like each player gets a dinosaur, right? And they get a
Yeah.
companion, and and so we're like, oh, cool, let's do that. My son's like, I don't care who I play, I just want to be the one that has an ankylosaurus. And they're like, fine. So you get your character, you get your dinosaur, and then the GM's like, all right, now take your dinosaur and pass it to the left, because they actually like run
Oh
your, they
no.
get to run your, they're the ones that actually run the dinosaur.
Oh no.
So it was a lot of fun though. I mean, it was still technically his dinosaur. It's just that someone
Yeah.
else would like control it. You'd have to do stuff in order to like get your dinosaur to do what you wanted it to do or
Mm.
whatever. But yeah, so like my first Gen Con, like we only played those two games, and one of them was a demo game, so they're always like short because they're right at the booth and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just about going there and hanging out with friends that you haven't met in person before for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. No, it's always a great environment. It's always really fun. And I hope the world can get back to normal so I can start going to nerd conventions again.
Yeah, yeah. Wait,
That
what's
would
the
be
first
the
one you want to get back to?
well, the first one on the that I think is gonna possibly happen is GaryCon.
Yeah,
But if I had to pick, it would be GaryCon Game Hole or North Texas RPG Con, which is a really small one
yeah.
down in Texas, where it's a lot of just old school gaming. A lot of the original TSR folks go, and it's really cool talking to them, kind of one on one. It's only like 500 people, so it's super tiny. Yeah, I would say like the smaller ones, I guess, are what I'm most excited to go back to. Those are the ones I generally get more excited for, anyway.
Yeah, so this year was going to be the first year that I was on the fence about going to Gary Con or not, but well,
Mm,
you know what happened there. So the decision was kind of taken out of my hands,
yeah,
which I haven't been to that one yet. And I definitely want to get out to Gary Con. So I was happy to get out to Gamehole Con last year. I was just like trying to tick some of these off, off the list,
right.
and
Yeah, GaryCon's awesome.
until we can finally get that Nerdarchy Con going.
Yeah, I know. That's gonna be really cool too.
Absolutely. So do you know what you're going to work on next after after this Kickstarter's done? Do you plan
Yeah,
out that far?
yeah. I have. So we've been very blessed recently. A lot of our projects have been doing really well. And when projects do well, you get to do bigger, cooler projects, basically, because you have more working capital and you can do larger scale things. And so we do have one like pretty turnaround again. We have a adventure for 5e and BX, written by Tom Wilson. I have not announced this anywhere except here. It's going to be a smaller book, I would say. I think it's going to be levels around level 8, and it's pretty cool because it's an adventure kind of designed for clerics, where you can kind of go get like cleric boons, I guess, and it incentivizes cleric play, I guess, which a lot of people don't like playing healers. So we thought it'd be cool to write an adventure for that. But of like large scale things, we have a lot of really cool things coming next year. Um, we have Palace of the Vampire Queen on the dock, which was technically the first adventure ever written for D&D. We have the rights to basically do revamped version, a big new version of it. So we're going to do a big new version for 5e and BX most likely, which is going to be really cool. It'll be like a levels 1 to 10 campaign, that kind of thing. And then ones that I'm like kind of nervous to say, and I'm going to say this is like, we're working on it and a lot of it is getting to done, is so 2 books for 5e, one mainly for the players and one mainly for DM, where the new players get a bunch of new spells, subclasses, races, sub races, backgrounds, all that kind of thing. And then the one for the GM that I want to write is a bunch of new monsters, new traps, new magic items, treasures, all that kind of stuff. So basically supplementary stuff for 5e. That's something we've been working on for a little bit now. And the new subclasses are nearly all done and they're awesome in my opinion, but I am a little biased.
It's okay. You should be biased about your stuff.
Yeah. So we have a lot. We have like we're working through it. And I am I kind of do this full time. Like I do, like I'm a student obviously, so I have to put time into that. But anytime I don't have into that is in this. I don't have like another job other than that. So pretty lucky that I get to do it like full time, I guess you could say.
So when do you guys think you'll be launching your own RPG? Because you'd mentioned that.
So the working title right now is Gamma X, and we'll most likely be putting that out. It's either going to be end of January or end of March. We're kind of still working on the schedule a little bit, just from like what other, we try to like work off of other third-party publishers, so we're not like overlapping each other or anything, because I want everyone to do well. So, and obviously Wizards of the Coast has their schedule, and
it's so hard.
I just want to work off of everyone. It's hard to, you can never get it perfect, but I do want to try to get it right. So the Gamma World kind of RPG will be out, I would say early next year is what I would bet for now.
So Scott wants to know, have you participated in any of the virtual cons?
So I have. I did the North Texas RPG Con virtually. And I think Gary Con has like a virtual game event coming up. I can't remember what they're calling it. I should know this off the top of my head, but I will do that one as well. I did not participate in virtual Gen Con, just because life gets busy.
Yeah. Oh, we've been terrible. We've been terrible about any of the virtual stuff, to be honest with you. Well, it's weird because like a lot of the virtual stuff isn't really why we go to any conventions, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's on our radar less.
I would agree with that. Yeah. Because like we talked about, it's nice meeting up with people. And like, for example, the North Texas one, I kind of signed up for games of people that I know.
Yeah.
So like I played in Chris Haskins' game, which was a blast, just super fun. And then I played with Stefan Porcorny, the founder of Dwarven Forge. And I've known him for a while, and that was really fun too. So yeah, I just kind of play in like friends games if they pop up in virtual cons.
Yeah, I got to play in one of Stefan's games at D&D in the Castle, actually.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh, I forgot that was a thing.
I know. Yeah, so that was kind of cool. I ended up in his game by accident. Like, I just had like free time, and I was like heading over to the bar to get a drink, and then next thing you know, I'm playing, in one of his games. So
I actually have like an awesome story of Stefan. I don't think I can find the picture in any fast time, but it was the best thing ever. It was at GaryCon, the last one before the pandemic. So not this year, but the year before. Mm-hmm. And so my buddies, a couple of them are like really big fans of Critical Role, right? As a lot of people my age who like D&D are. And it was his second major convention, first. Maybe it was his first. It was his first because there were rumors that Matt Mercer was going to be there. And he's like, Ben, you have to find me Matt Mercer. And I'm like, I don't think you know who, like, I'm not that important where I can find you Matt Mercer. I can find you the old school people, but I doubt I can find you. So there was like this VIP party or whatever. And Bill Webb like grabbed us and he's like, come on, you're coming with me. So we go in. And it was so cool. And everyone's just sitting and having fun. And Picorni has this pineapple, and my friend is like, why does that dude have a pineapple? So he goes up to him and he's just talking to him. And I was like, hey, Cody, this is the guy who is the founder of Dwarven Forge. And he's like, what? And he had like this whole fanboy moment over him because Dwarven Forge sponsors Critical Role.
Yeah.
So they have this picture, his first convention ever, his like first real like event with a bunch of people that he loves and, you know, is a fan of. And he has a picture with the founder of Dwarven Forge with a pineapple. It is the funniest picture I think I have in my camera roll to this day. It is just so hilarious.
Did he get to hold the pineapple?
He got to hold the pineapple. It was like the mascot. It was hilarious.
And why was Stefan carrying
I
around
don't
a
know to this day, dude. He's got a mind of his own.
I
He's
suspect
such a good guy. I love him so much.
I suspect if you were to ask him, he wouldn't know why he had the pineapple
Nope.
at this point either. So
Not even a little bit. No.
Stefan's great. He's definitely a character though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually got to talk to him quite a bit at D&D in the Castle. I ended up sitting with him, you know, at the pub when we went out to dinner. I think the first night, because of course, you know, it's D&D, so you have to meet in a tavern.
Of course. Why not?
Yeah, and talking to him for quite some time. So definitely a character. He was fun and interesting to rap with for a while.
Yeah, I know. I just feel like I might be boring people, but I just have I have these kind of stories for like everyone just because of how many conventions I've gone to.
Yeah,
So,
how many
like,
conventions do you think you've been to?
oh, I don't know. It probably like 4 a year for what is it, 2020?
Yeah.
I would say safely 20 to 30. But it could be like more or less, plus or minus.
Yeah, you're like a professional convention goer.
Yeah.
At this
But I
point.
still get surprised like every time. Like the
Yeah.
first con that I went to where like Joe Manganiello was there
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I just like froze in front of him. It was like so embarrassing, but it was hilarious.
Yeah.
It was really fun.
I mean, there's definitely some big names like that. It was funny because like we went out to Geek and Sundry, and we were there for like one of the Critical Role shows. And we met Matt and, you know, some of the cast and kind of hung out there for a while. And then, like at that time, you know, Ted wasn't watching them yet and hadn't really become a fan yet.
Yeah.
And then, you know, but since then he started really, you know, he went back and watched all of the first campaign and was like watching the second campaign and became this huge fan.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we were at the last Gen Con, and he brought his Tal'Dorei book because he wanted to try and get it signed.
Mhm.
And we were sitting in the lobby of one of the hotels, hanging out with Brian Collin from Creature Curators,
Mhm.
and we were just waiting for somebody to head out to dinner. And then like Matt walks in, and Talis and Jaffe walks in, and like with our entourage, and and Ted went up to talk to him, and he's just like starts stammering, and it was so funny because he started like totally fanboying out, but it was so funny because he'd already met him at this point,
Yeah.
you know. So it's kind of like it was kind of weird that way, but you know. And then like later during Gen Con, we got to hang out with those guys again and talk to them, and Ted's like, oh, I'm so embarrassed about that, and it's like, yeah, don't worry about it. They're regular people, and it does happen. I've definitely had those moments as well. When I met Matt, like, and it's weird too because it was like after meeting him the first time. I think like sometimes it's like the environment kind of changes it too, like where you
Yeah.
meet them. Like when we met him at Geek and Sundry, is like way more casual and kind of like laid back. And I feel like, you know, when you're at a convention or at a party, it just seems like everything's like,
You're on.
yeah, everything's so much
Yeah.
more hyped up, and you're kind of excited about everything's going on anyway.
Yeah,
So-
I had a similar kind of interaction with him, and I talked to him very briefly at Gamehole like 2 or 3 years ago, and like it was so fast that I doubt he would even remember me at all. But then like the next year at GaryCon, he came and he was walking around the vendor hall with his assistant, and like he came to our booth, and I was like, just like, oh God, all right, calm down. and go. So I
Yeah.
go up and start talking to him. And I was like, hey, I'm Ben. Nice to see you. I don't know if you remember, but he's like, oh, we met at Game Hole. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Dude, this guy is just he's such a good dude. And we generally do our booths like open, so like people can come around and walk in and shop.
Mm-hmm.
And as me and my buddies are sitting talking to Matt and his assistant, and there's like a line forming behind him, and like I noticed it, and I was like, hey, do you want to do a meet and greet at the booth, because there's a lot of people here who I assume want to take a picture with you. So for like an hour and a half, Matt stood in our booth and signed and took pictures and stuff. It was just so cool. He's so wholesome.
He is.
Like he's such a good...
you probably totally trapped him though, because he's so nice he wouldn't say no. He's
yeah,
not like
that's why his assistant was there, I think, to get it moving.
Yeah.
But yeah, I ended up talking to his assistant for a really long time, and because she used to work in Disney as well. So this was when I was working at Disney, and we were just swapping stories. It was so cool. It's just such a small world. Like, you just have no idea what you have in common with people until you start talking, you know?
Small world, Disney. Gotcha.
Always pun intended.
Always. Well, with that, we're up on the hour, and I could sit here and talk to you probably for another hour or two, but it is time to wrap things up. Any final thoughts before we head on out?
No, thanks for having me. This was a great story time. I think what this turned into. Thanks for having me, man.
Well, thanks for coming on.
Fun. It's always fun being on the show, but it was cool being invited back, I think. So,
yeah. Anytime, awesome. Man. Anytime. As always, there's links in the description. Go check out that Kickstarter, especially if you're looking for some solo play with your D&D Swords and Wizardry or the BX series. And, once this isn't live anymore, it'll be in the pinned comment. And with that, till next time, stay nerdy.